was sitting where you're sitting and testifying before a different committee of which I was a member, and he said, "Oh, we should love AI. It's wonderful. Soon we will automate and take away all kinds of non-creative jobs that we really don't need in this country anymore, like everyone who might work at a service restaurant, for example. We just won't need any of those people." I said to him, "That's not a utopia. That sounds to me like a dystopia. That sounds to me like you're eliminating hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs."
Dear Americans, let me tell you something that you already feel in your gut. The American worker is under attack. From open borders to globalist trade deals, from DI nonsense in our military to now, artificial intelligence threatening to replace millions of American jobs. And this week in Congress, we saw a conversation that proves two things. One, that we've got leaders like Senator Josh Hawley still fighting for the working man, and two, that we are heading straight for a battle with Silicon Valley and their army of unelected technocrats. And this, the Prodigy Unfiltered. Smash the subscribe button to get more updates.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sanderling, nice to see you again. I enjoyed our conversation the other day. I've been talking about a pro-worker framework for policy and legislation that I hope to advance in this Congress, doing common sense things like delivering transparency in the workforce, holding abusive employers accountable, making union elections fair and timely, getting fair and timely initial contracts when employees vote for a union, and boosting penalties for unfair treatment. You and I have talked about this some. You kindly offered in my office to work with me and provide technical feedback on the legislation and other forms of support. Are you willing to reaffirm that today and help us as we try to advance in this Congress legislation that will protect workers along the lines that President Trump has talked about and also strengthen our economy?
Senator, I enjoyed our conversation. I enjoy not only your passion for the workforce, but also President Trump's vision on bringing everyone together in his administration. And as we discussed, for you or any other senator, you have the full resources of the Department of Labor for any technical assistance on any part of the bills that this Congress decides that they would like to move forward or any of the senators want to sponsor. We will be there to assist you, providing technical guidance through both our political and career staff to make sure that you all can pass legislation.
Good, very good. Thank you for that. Let me ask you a little bit about artificial intelligence, which is something else that you and I discussed, and I enjoyed our conversation. You talked about your tenure at the EEOC and your role that you played helping to determine the appropriate uses for AI in hiring. What role do you think AI should play when it comes to federal hiring?
I think that we have to look at this, whether it's the federal government or the private sector, the same way. The tools that are being developed out of Silicon Valley are being used in the hiring process, not just here in the U.S., but across the world. And I think the U.S. needs to obviously lead in that innovation, and we need to keep that innovation here. But how do we do that? And that's what we discussed, making sure that all these tools are designed in accordance with our longstanding laws, no matter what the use is. We talked about employment, but there's obviously a lot of different kinds of uses of artificial intelligence. And we are not going to be able to succeed as a global leader in AI without making sure that the products are developed, designed, and deployed in accordance with the laws that Congress have passed. Not new laws yet, not new government bodies, with what we have in the executive branch. And there's a lot of old laws that we can apply to this. They're not outdated. That's our job to apply.
Let me just zoom out on this a little bit and ask you more broadly. Many American workers are very concerned about losing their jobs to AI, concerns that I think are very well-founded. What's your message to American workers who feel at risk from this so-called AI revolution and think, gee, pretty soon I'm not going to have a job at all?
Well, this is a very, very important conversation, and another conversation on how we win, making sure that all workplace workers who are going to be either using these tools, subject to these tools, are not fearful that they're going to be replaced by them. And that's really working with the entire AI community, whether it's the venture capitalists, the vendors, to ensure that these products are developed, designed, and deployed with that in mind, that this is going to essentially make your job easier, better, and you could be more enjoyable and thrive more in the workplace and not having that fear of displacement. And if these tools are used to displace workers, that's a whole different conversation that we need to have before that occurs, to make sure that all protections in the workforce are built into these systems. Because if they're not, then that's a part we could use law enforcement if jobs are improperly being displaced by artificial intelligence, the same way we would do if it was by humans.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that answer. And I just want to register a concern here that I've registered in other contexts, which is we hear a lot about the AI revolution and how wonderful it's going to be for workers. And I hope that that's true. And I think it should be the business of this Congress to make sure it is true, because what I am not willing to see are large amounts of jobs, or really any number of good paying jobs, ruined, destroyed, taken by AI. We have too few good paying blue collar jobs in this country. I don't want an AI revolution that takes away even more of those jobs. I remember when the CEO of Microsoft not so long ago was sitting where you're sitting and testifying before a different committee of which I was a member, and he said, "Oh, we should love AI. It's wonderful. Soon we will automate and take away all kinds of non-creative jobs that we really don't need in this country anymore, like everyone who might work at a service restaurant, for example. We just won't need any of those people." I said to him, that's not a utopia. That sounds to me like a dystopia. That sounds to me like you're eliminating hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs that are often the way that workers get their foot in the door, they get into the labor force. So I'm glad to hear your answers. I'm glad for your work on AI. We've got to make sure that our workers are benefiting from this technology, not being ravaged and preyed upon by this technology.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You heard that right. That's Senator Hawley, standing up for the men and women in this country who still believe in the dignity of labor. For the folks who wake up at 5 a.m., punch a time clock, put in 10 hours on the floor, and just want a shot at the American dream. And guess what? The AI elite in Silicon Valley don't care about them. They want to automate them out of existence. Let me break this down for you. Senator Hawley laid out a pro-worker, America First legislative framework. He's talking about common sense reforms, things like transparency in the workplace, holding abusive employers accountable, making union elections fair and timely, and ensuring workers actually get contracts when they vote for a union. That's not socialism. That's justice. That's accountability. And that's what real conservatives used to stand for before the Chamber of Commerce sold our people out to China and Silicon Valley. Now, Mr. Sanderling, the Biden administration's nominee, tried to play nice. He said he's happy to provide technical assistance and that he respects President Trump's vision. Okay, that's all well and good. But actions speak louder than words. Because here's where things get dicey. Look, I don't disagree. We shouldn't force the laws. But what laws is he talking about? We've got labor laws written in the 1960s being applied to 21st century tech giants who don't believe in borders, don't believe in gender, and sure as heck don't believe in America. And we're just supposed to trust that they'll behave? That they'll voluntarily not replace you with a chatbot? Let me say this loud and clear. AI is not neutral. It's not just a tool. It's a weapon, one that's being aimed at the working class by woke billionaires who want a country of renters, not owners, screen-staring dependents, not independent citizens. And you know what really burns me? Hawley nailed it when he quoted Microsoft's CEO bragging about eliminating so-called non-creative jobs like working in service restaurants. You know what that means, right? They're coming for the cook, the cashier, the delivery driver, the janitor, the factory worker, the backbone of America. This ain't utopia. That's dystopia. That's not innovation. That's insubordination to the American dream. And it's got to stop. We need an America First AI policy that protects our people before profits, our jobs before globalist fantasies. I'm all for progress. I'm all for technology. But not if it puts tens of millions of Americans out of work, so some vegan billionaire can buy his fourth yacht and donate to climate alarmist NGOs. Senator Hawley's warning is dead on. Congress must make sure this AI revolution serves the American people, not scalps them. We need strict limits on how AI can be used in hiring and firing, real penalties for companies that replace workers with robots, tax incentives for businesses that keep jobs in America, and maybe even a moratorium on full automation in critical sectors like food service, logistics, and manufacturing. Because here's the bottom line. If we allow AI to hollow out our labor force, if we let big tech dictate who gets a job and who gets replaced, then we will become a nation of servants to the algorithm, not citizens of a republic. And I didn't sign up for that. You didn't sign up for that. And our forefathers sure as hell didn't fight for that. This is the moment, patriots. The battle isn't just in the ballot box anymore. It's in our workplaces, our factories, our truck stops, our small towns. We need to raise our voices now before we get silenced by a line of code. Support leaders like Josh Hawley. Hold big tech accountable. And above all, stand up for the American worker. Because without them, there is no America. This is Prodigy Unfiltered. Like, share, subscribe, and stay in the fight. God bless America. United States.